People made fun of him for adopting 3 black sisters, thinking he would be sorry one day. But many years later, those same people are begging the sisters for help. What has made them so desperate? Before we start the story, write in the comments where you are watching from today. And if you enjoy this story, remember to subscribe. Charlie was in his workshop, surrounded by the smell of fresh wood. He was working on a bookshelf, sanding the edges smoothly. Charlie was 40 years old, and his dark hair was turning gray. There were lines around his eyes that showed he had been sad for a long time. His eyes were warm and brown, but they still looked a little sad. While he worked, he thought about his wife, Samantha, who had passed away 2 years ago. He missed her so much. He could still see her smile, hear her laugh, and feel her hugs. Charlie closed his eyes and whispered, "I miss you, Samantha." Their workshop, which was part of their home, felt empty without Samantha. Charlie looked around at all the tools and projects. Everything was neat, just the way Samantha liked it, but it didn't feel the same. As the sun began to go down, Charlie put away his tools and walked into the house. The house was very quiet, no children running around, no giggles, no one calling out, "Dad!" It was just silence. Charlie's carpentry business kept him busy, but it didn't make him feel happy. He and Samantha had always dreamed of having a family, but it never happened. Now that Samantha was gone, that dream seemed even further away. He made a simple dinner for one and sat at the table. As he ate, he looked at the empty chairs and imagined the children they had dreamed of having, a girl with curly hair like Samantha's and a boy with his own smile. The thought of what could have been made him sad, and he could barely eat. Later, Charlie went to the local church where he often volunteered. He helped with small tasks, and the familiar surroundings made him feel a little better. But even there, surrounded by people, he felt alone. Families were all around, with parents helping their children. The pastor, Pastor Mike, thanked Charlie for his help. "We're lucky to have you here, Charlie," he said. Charlie smiled a little and said, "I'm happy to help, Pastor." But when he saw Dad picking up his laughing daughter, that familiar ache of wanting to be a father came back. That night, Charlie lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the loneliness of his home. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, reminding him of how much time had passed. He whispered into the darkness, "Oh, Samantha, I wish you were here. I wish we had the family we always dreamed of." A tear rolled down his cheek as he closed his eyes, hoping that maybe tomorrow would be different. The next Sunday, Charlie went to church early to help. The church was busy with families because there was a special event happening. Charlie felt a bit lighter as he watched the children having fun. Pastor Mike asked Charlie to help at the craft table. "Of course," Charlie said. As he set up glue sticks and scissors, he heard laughter nearby. He looked up and saw 3 little girls with curly hair giggling together. Their laughter was full of joy, but Charlie could sense that they had been through tough times. Pastor Mike noticed Charlie looking at the girls and said, "Those are the Hernandez sisters, Maya, Lila, and Ella. They've had a hard time recently." Charlie's heart tightened as he watched the girls. Even though they were smiling, he could tell they needed love and care. He walked over to their table and asked, "Hi there, what are you making?" Maya, the oldest, looked up and said, "We're making paper flowers for our new room." Charlie smiled and said, "That sounds wonderful. Can I join you?" The girls nodded, and soon Charlie was helping them with their crafts. Lila and Ella, the younger twins, talked about their favorite colors, while Maya helped her sisters with the cutting. Charlie noticed how Maya took care of her younger sisters, even though she was only 6 years old. It reminded him of how he had always dreamed of taking care of his own children. Later, Charlie overheard Pastor Mike talking to a church leader. "The Hernandez girls need a permanent home," the woman said. "They lost their parents to an illness, and then their foster family was in a bad accident." Charlie's heart felt heavy as he thought about the girls. They had been through so much, but still found a way to laugh. For the first time in a long while, Charlie felt something new: hope. As Charlie helped clean up, he couldn't stop thinking about the girls. He thought about Samantha and the family they had wanted. Could these girls be the answer to the prayers they had once made together? He couldn't get the image of the Hernandez sisters out of his mind, especially the way they had welcomed him into their little world. When Charlie got home, the house felt even emptier. He sat down and ran a hand through his graying hair. "Oh, Samantha," he whispered. "What would you say if you were here?" He looked at a picture of him and Samantha on their wedding day. She was smiling so brightly, full of joy. He remembered how they had talked about adopting children someday. Could he really do it? Could he raise 3 girls all by himself? The thought of adopting the Hernandez sisters felt big and scary. There would be challenges, different cultures, people's opinions, and learning how to be a dad to 3 young girls. But then he thought about Maya taking care of her sisters and how strong the girls had been even after everything they had been through. He thought about how lonely he felt and how much he had longed for a family. Charlie stood up and walked through his house. He looked at the empty rooms that had once been meant for children and the backyard where he had imagined them playing. Could this be the family he had always wanted? Charlie once dreamed of building a treehouse where his family could have dinner as the sun set, making the windows glow warmly. As he stood in the kitchen, Charlie felt something change inside him. The house didn't feel like a place for lost dreams anymore. Instead, he saw it as a home where love and laughter could live. He decided then and there that he would adopt the Hernandez sisters. The idea both excited and scared him, but deep down, he knew it was the right thing to do. "I'm going to be a dad," Charlie whispered to himself, feeling both happy and nervous. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as he looked around the house, he felt ready to face it all. His hands shook as he called his sister, Betsy. She had been there for him when his wife, Samantha, passed away, and he knew she would support him now. "Hey, Bets," he said when she answered. "I've got some big news. Can you come over?" An hour later, Betsy sat at the kitchen table, her eyes wide. "You're doing what?" she asked, shocked. Charlie took a deep breath. "I'm adopting the Hernandez sisters, 3 little girls who need a home." Betsy frowned. "Charlie, have you really thought this through? You're a single white man in a mostly white town. How are you going to raise 3 black girls?" Her words hit him hard. He hadn't thought about the challenges. "I'll learn," he said, though he wasn't sure how. Pardon? Betsy leaned forward, her voice softer but still serious. "It's not just about giving them a home, Charlie. It's about understanding their culture and their experiences. How are you going to protect them from prejudice? Do you know how to care for their hair or their skin? These things are important." Charlie's confidence wavered. He hadn't thought of these things. "I'll figure it out," he said, but he wasn't sure anymore. "And what about your work?" Betsy asked. "How will you manage your business and be a full-time dad? These girls need stability, and they've already lost so much." Charlie's mind spun. He had been so focused on his own loneliness that he hadn't thought enough about what the girls would need. Doubt crept in. "I just want to give them a family," he said quietly, "like Samantha and I always wanted." Betsy softened. "I know you do, Charlie, but this isn't just about what you want. It's about what's best for the girls. Are you really ready?" As Betsy's words sunk in, Charlie began to realize how big this decision was. Was he really ready to face the challenges ahead? As news of Charlie's plan to adopt the Hernandez sisters spread through the neighborhood, people started to whisper. The once friendly faces of his neighbors now seemed full of judgment. One sunny afternoon at the neighborhood barbecue, Charlie was grilling burgers, trying to ignore the hushed conversations and stares. Mrs. Parker, the elderly lady from across the street, came up to him. "Charlie, dear," she said with a fake smile, Are you sure you know what you're doing? Raising kids is hard enough, but, well, you know. Charlie forced a smile. I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Parker, but I'm committed. The girls need a home, and I'm ready to give them one. As she walked away, Charlie overheard someone else. He's lost his mind. What does he know about raising black kids? It was Tom, the accountant from 2 doors down. I give it 6 months before he gives up. Sarah, another neighbor, replied. It's like a social experiment to him. Charlie gripped the spatula tightly, his knuckles turning white. He wanted to shout at them to defend his choice, but he stayed quiet. Arguing wouldn't help. All afternoon, Charlie felt the weight of people's judgment. Some offered unhelpful advice, while others made cruel jokes about his new family experiment. But with every hurtful comment, Charlie's resolve grew stronger. He knew he wanted to give Maya, Lila, and Ella a loving home. As the barbecue wound down, his old friend Mike came up to him. Don't let them get to you, Charlie, Mike said quietly. What you're doing is good. It won't be easy, but those girls deserve a family. Charlie nodded, grateful for the support. Thanks, Mike. I know it's going to be hard, but I'm ready. As he walked home, he felt the eyes of his neighbors on him, and the streets that once felt so familiar now felt strange. But with every step, he felt more determined to give the Hernandez sisters the love they deserved. As Charlie spent more time with Maya, Lila, and Ella, he learned more about them. Maya, who was 6, acted like a protector. At the park, she watched her younger sisters closely, always making sure they were safe. Be careful, Lila, she called as her sister climbed the jungle gym. Leela, who liked to be independent, was always exploring. One day, she found some wildflowers and made a flower crown. Look, Charlie, I made a crown, she said, her face beaming with pride. Ella, the quietest of the 3, sat with Charlie by the pond one day, watching the ducks. She leaned into him and asked softly, Do you think the baby ducks miss their mommy when she swims away? Charlie's heart filled with love for these girls. As the weeks went by, their bond grew stronger. Maya loved to read and always asked for one more bedtime story. Lila loved puzzles and could spend hours solving them. Ella had a beautiful singing voice and hummed quietly while she colored. One night, as Charlie tucked them into bed, Maya looked up at him with serious eyes. Are you really going to be our daddy? She asked. Charlie's heart swelled. Yes, sweetheart. If that's what you want, I'd love to be your daddy. Lila chimed in. Even though we don't look like you? Charlie smiled and stroked her hair. Family isn't about looking alike. It's about love, and I love you girls very much. From the other bed, Ella's small voice whispered, We love you too, Charlie. At that moment, Charlie knew adopting the girls was the best decision he'd ever made. The love he felt for them filled the empty spaces in his heart. But outside their happy home, people continued to judge. At the grocery store, Charlie overheard someone say, Poor man, he has no idea what he's in for. At the school where he was enrolling the girls, the secretary looked at him with doubt. Are you sure you can handle 3 kids on your own? She asked. Despite all the judgment, Charlie stayed strong. The joy he found in the girls' laughter and the love they shared was far greater than any negativity from others. Finally, the day came when Charlie officially adopted the Hernandez sisters. As he watched them walk into their new home with their backpacks and stuffed animals, his heart overflowed with love. Welcome home, girls, Charlie said, his voice filled with emotion. The first few days were full of excitement and adjustment. The once quiet house was now filled with giggles, footsteps, and even a few arguments, but it felt more like home than ever before. Charlie was always busy, trying to keep up with the energy and needs of the 3 girls he had adopted. They brought him so much joy, but there were also tough times. One night, he heard soft crying. He found Ella holding a picture of her foster parents. I miss them, she whispered. Charlie hugged her tightly. I know, sweetheart, he said, feeling tears in his eyes. It's okay to miss them. They loved you very much. Charlie quickly realized that being a father was harder than he thought. Cooking meals, helping with homework, and managing the girls' schedules left him very tired. But every time one of them smiled or called him daddy, he knew it was all worth it. Not everyone was happy for Charlie. When he walked the girls to school, he noticed other parents giving them cold stares. In the grocery store, he overheard people whispering, "How can he know what those girls need?" Charlie felt hurt, but kept his head high, holding the girls' hands tighter. Even at church, where he had always felt welcome, people seemed uncomfortable now. Some avoided him or quickly ended conversations. One Sunday, he heard two church members say, "It's not right, a single white man raising 3 black girls. It's going to be trouble." Charlie felt angry and sad, but instead of confronting them, he gathered the girls and went home, feeling more alone than ever. The first day of school came, and Charlie watched with pride and worry as Maya, Lila, and Ella walked through the school gates. He waved goodbye, but inside, he was nervous. As the day went on, the girls faced mean behavior. During recess, Ella stood by herself while other kids ignored her. When she tried to join a game, the kids ran away. Lila had a hard time too. In art class, her teacher, Mrs. Parker, saw her drawing and said, "Leela, your coloring is as wild as your hair." Lila felt embarrassed as the other kids giggled. She touched her curly hair, trying not to cry. Maya, the oldest, tried to keep an eye on her sisters, but struggled too. In math class, she raised her hand to answer questions, but the teacher never called on her, even though she was the only one with her hand up. When school ended, Charlie could tell the girls had a hard day. As they got into the car, they were quiet. "How was your day, girls?" Charlie asked, worried. Ella's lip trembled. "No one wanted to play with me, Daddy," she said. Lila crossed her arms. "My teacher said my hair was wild. Is it wild, Daddy?" Maya stayed quiet, staring out of the window. Charlie's heart broke. He knew it would be hard, but seeing his daughters hurt was painful. When they got home, he hugged them tight. "I'm so sorry you had a tough day," he said, his voice full of emotion. "You're all so special. Don't let anyone make you feel bad." That night, after the girls were in bed, Charlie sat in the living room, his head in his hands. He thought about the prejudice they would face and wondered if he had made the right choice. Could he protect them? But when he heard Ella whimper in her room, he stood up, determined. He may not have all the answers, but he knew he would love and protect his daughters no matter what. As time went on, Charlie became more confident as a father. One autumn morning, Charlie was braiding Lila's hair. His big hands, which were used to working with wood, now gently moved through her curls. "How's that, sweetheart?" he asked. Leela looked in the mirror and smiled. "It's perfect, Daddy," she said. Charlie felt proud. He had practiced a lot to get good at braiding her hair. At school, Charlie had to fight for his girls. At a meeting, he spoke firmly. "My daughters deserve the same respect as every other child," he said. The room was silent, but Charlie knew he had to stand up for his girls. At home, Charlie made sure the girls felt proud of who they were. He filled their shelves with books about Black characters and decorated their home with artwork that celebrated their heritage. During family movie nights, they watched films that showed Black heroes and history. One evening at dinner, Maya asked, "Daddy, why do some people not like us because of how we look?" Charlie's heart hurt, but he explained, "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand. But that's their problem, not yours. You are beautiful, smart, and kind. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about that." The girls nodded, listening closely. Even though Charlie did his best, things didn't always get better. Invitations to neighborhood events became fewer, and people still whispered behind their backs. But Charlie refused to let it get them down. He organized playdates with families who were kind and took the girls to cities where people celebrated differences. The girls continued to grow and shine. Maya loved learning about medicine and dreamed of becoming a doctor. "I want to help people, just like the doctors in my books, she told Charlie one night, and people who can't afford medicine, like my biological parents. Charlie's heart filled with pride. You can be anything you want, sweetheart, he said. Lila, the go-getter, set up a lemonade stand in their yard. She proudly showed Charlie the money she made. I earned $15.27, she said, beaming. I'm saving it to start a big company one day. Charlie laughed and ruffled her hair. That's my little businesswoman, he said. Ella loved helping others learn. She often stayed after school to help her classmates with their work. Her teacher even told Charlie how special Ella was at explaining things. But life wasn't always easy. One day, Maya came home in tears after a classmate said she couldn't be a doctor because of her skin color. Fewer people came to Lila's lemonade stand when she was working alone. And Ella, even though she was great at teaching, was passed over for class helper. At night, Charlie would lie awake thinking about the challenges his daughters faced. But no matter what, he was determined to support them. Then one day, Charlie got a call from the school principal. We need to talk about your daughters, the principal said. Charlie felt a knot in his stomach, worried about what would happen next. Charlie's heart was racing as he sat in the vice principal's office. Mrs. Peterson, the vice principal, began to speak. Some parents think the girls might do better in a different place, one that's more mixed. Charlie's face turned red with anger. You mean because they're black? He asked, his voice getting louder. Mr. Watkins, another school worker, raised his hands. Now, Charlie, we just want what's best for all the kids. Charlie stood up quickly, making his chair scrape on the floor. My daughters are doing great here. Maya wants to be a doctor. Lila is already showing business skills, and Ella helps her classmates every day. They belong here just as much as any other child. We understand, Mr. Watkins said, looking nervous, but we have to think about all the parents' concerns. Charlie leaned forward, his eyes serious. My girls aren't going anywhere. They have every right to be here, and I won't let anyone push them out because of the color of their skin. The meeting ended, and though the girls were allowed to stay, Charlie felt bitter and angry. As he walked down the school hallway, he overheard two moms whispering, "Can you believe they're letting those girls stay?" One said, "It's just not right." Charlie's heart hurt for his daughters. He knew things would be tough, but he was ready to fight for them. When he got home, he sat at the kitchen table, resting his head in his hands. He could hear his daughters laughing in the living room, but their happy voices couldn't make the heavy feeling in his heart go away. Am I doing enough? He whispered to himself. The meeting had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. The prejudice, the whispers, and the cold looks were all weighing on him. He glanced at a photo of his wife, Samantha, on the wall. I wish you were here, he said softly. You'd know what to do. Being a single father in a community that didn't want them there made Charlie feel overwhelmed. He wondered if he was strong enough to protect his girls from the hate they faced every day. Just then, Maya ran into the kitchen with bright eyes. Dad, I got an A on my science project, she shouted, waving her paper in the air. Charlie smiled. That's wonderful, sweetheart, he said, giving her a big hug. Lila and Ella followed close behind. Dad, can we set up my lemonade stand this weekend? Lila asked. Ella added, Can I invite my reading buddy over? I want to help her with her spelling. Charlie looked at his daughters and felt something change inside him. Even with everything going on, they were happy and doing well. Maya's love for science, Lila's interest in business, and Ella's kindness were all growing stronger. He realized his job wasn't just to protect them. It was also to help them chase their dreams, no matter what anyone else thought. Of course, Charlie said, feeling stronger now. We can do all that. And you know what? Let's start planning for your futures, too. Maya, why don't we look into some science programs for you? Lila, we can find business classes for kids. Ella, maybe we can look for tutoring opportunities. The girls' eyes sparkled with excitement as they talked about their plans. Charlie felt a new sense of purpose. He couldn't change the whole town overnight, but he could help his daughters succeed no matter what. That night, as Charlie tucked them into bed, he made a silent promise. He would help them grow strong and confident, showing them they could achieve anything they set their minds to. Years went by, and the Hernandez sisters grew into young women. Each of them followed their dreams with determination. Charlie watched with pride as they started their careers, his heart full of love. Maya, now 22, had been accepted into medical school. She was excited to help others, but she couldn't escape the prejudice around her. "Are you sure you're in the right class?" a classmate asked her on the first day, looking at her doubtfully. Maya took a deep breath and remembered Charlie's words. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she answered firmly. Across town, 21-year-old Lila was studying business. She was full of great ideas, but not everyone wanted to listen. During a group project, she suggested a new marketing plan, but her teammates looked at each other before one said, "That's interesting, but maybe we should do something more traditional." Lila felt her cheeks burn, but she stood her ground. "Traditional doesn't always mean better," she said, remembering the strength Charlie had taught her. Meanwhile, Ella, also 21, was working toward her dream of becoming a teacher. Her kind and gentle nature made her great with children, but her boss didn't seem to notice. "You're good with the kids, Ella," her mentor said one day, "but are you sure you can handle the tough students?" Ella's heart sank, knowing what her mentor really meant, but she thought of Charlie and how he never gave up. "I can handle anything," she said softly, but with confidence. Despite their challenges, the sisters always found comfort in each other and in Charlie's support. Every Sunday, they had family dinners where they shared their wins and struggles. "I'm so proud of all of you," Charlie said one night, his eyes filled with emotion. "You're handling everything life throws at you. That's just like we always have." Maya smiled and squeezed Charlie's hand. "We learn from the best, Dad." Lila nodded. "You taught us to always stand up for what we believe in, and to always help each other," Ella added softly. As they sat together, Charlie realized that despite all the obstacles, his daughters had grown into strong, brave women. They were ready to change the world, one step at a time. Years passed, and the Hernandez sisters became even more successful. Maya, now 28, opened her own medical clinic in their town. The sign outside said, "Dr. Maya Carter, Family Medicine." But even though she worked hard and was highly trained, not many people came to see her. Some folks in town weren't ready to trust a black doctor, no matter how qualified she was. One evening, Maya sat alone in her empty office, her head in her hands. Charlie found her there and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "I don't get it, Dad," Maya said, her voice full of sadness. "I've worked so hard. Why can't they look past my skin color?" Charlie's heart ached for his daughter. "Keep going, sweetheart," he said softly. "Your kindness and skill will win them over. It might take time, but you're making a difference just by being here." Across town, Lila, now 27, faced her own challenges. She had started her own business selling eco-friendly products, but it wasn't going as well as she had hoped. Even though she had great business skills, investors didn't take her seriously. "I'm sorry, Miss Hernandez," one investor said, barely looking at her carefully prepared presentation. "Your idea is interesting, but we're looking for something more traditional." Lila left the meeting feeling frustrated. She knew traditional meant they didn't believe in her because of who she was. But Lila didn't give up. She remembered the determination Charlie had always taught her. Meanwhile, Ella, also 27, had become a well-loved elementary school teacher. Her gentle ways and new teaching ideas made her a favorite with kids and parents alike. Even though the sisters had their struggles, they never gave up. And through it all, Charlie was there to support them. They knew no matter what, they could always count on each other. When it was time for promotions at work, Ella was always passed over. "We've chosen someone with more experience," the principal told her, avoiding her eyes. Ella smiled politely, but inside she was very sad. She knew she was just as good as the others who got promoted. She had felt this kind of unfairness before. Despite their struggles, the Hernandez sisters, Ella, Maya, and Lila, stayed close, supporting each other and getting help from Charlie, who adopted them. They faced each problem with courage, and their bond grew stronger each time. But the sisters were tired. Dealing with unfairness every day made them feel exhausted. Maya sat alone in her empty clinic, staring at her medical tools that hadn't been used in days. She picked up a photo of herself on graduation day, smiling proudly in her white coat. Now, that happy day felt far away. "Maybe I should close my clinic," she whispered sadly. She didn't want to give up, but being ignored every day hurt. Across town, Lila was in her small office, pacing nervously. She had made new eco-friendly products, but another investor had just told her no. She knew it wasn't about the products. They just didn't want to support someone like her. "Why do I even try?" she muttered, sitting down. She opened her computer and looked at selling her business, something she had worked so hard to build. At school, Ella sat alone in her classroom after everyone had gone home. She loved her students, but being ignored for promotions was making her sad. She held a resignation letter, her hands shaking, wondering if she should look for another job. That night, the sisters gathered at home for dinner with Charlie. Usually, their dinners were full of laughter and chatting, but tonight was quiet. Charlie noticed the sad look on their faces. "All right, girls," he said gently, "what's going on?" The sisters looked at each other, and finally, Maya spoke. "Dad, we're thinking of giving up. It's just too hard." Charlie's heart sank as each of his daughters shared their struggles. He listened carefully, his eyes filled with love. "I understand how you're feeling," Charlie said, his voice gentle but strong. "But remember what you've already been through. When we became a family, people whispered and doubted us, but we didn't let them win then, did we?" The sisters nodded, remembering those tough times. "You fought so hard to get where you are. Giving up now would be letting them win," Charlie continued. "You're stronger than that. You're Hernandez sisters." He looked at each one. "Maya, your clinic might be slow now, but think of all the people you'll help when they finally see how good you are. Lila, your ideas are amazing, and if they don't see it, it's their loss. And Ella, your students love you. You're making a difference every day." Charlie's words brought a small spark back to the sisters. They sat up straighter, feeling a bit more confident. "You're right, Dad," Maya said with a stronger voice. "We can't give up now." Lila nodded. "We've come too far," she said. Ella squeezed Charlie's hand. "Thank you for believing in us, even when we doubt ourselves." The sisters felt determined again, but their struggles weren't over. They knew the road ahead would be tough, but they were ready to face it together. Just as the sisters started to feel stronger, a flu epidemic hit the town. People got sick quickly, and the hospitals were full. Everyone was scared, and the town turned chaotic. Maya, seeing the crisis, opened her clinic to help while offering free care to anyone who needed it. But even though people needed help, her clinic stayed empty. They didn't want her help. "I don't get it," Maya whispered one evening, looking at the empty chairs in her clinic. "I'm here to help, but no one will come." Lila also faced new problems. Rumors spread that her eco-friendly products weren't strong enough to kill the virus, even though they were. People chose to buy harsh chemicals instead, and Lila's sales dropped. "It's not fair," she said, frustrated. "My products work just as well, better even. Why can't they see that?" At Ella's school, things were no better. Parents, afraid of the virus, started pulling their children out of her class. People whispered that Ella's race made her more likely to spread the flu. Every empty desk felt like a betrayal to Ella. "I've taken care of these kids all year," she told Charlie one night, tears in her eyes. "How could they think I would put them at risk?" The town's trust in the Hernandez sisters faded as the epidemic worsened. Their efforts to help were met with suspicion and fear. They had worked so hard for their community, but now they felt like outsiders. Charlie watched his daughter struggle. He saw how Maya slumped her shoulders as she locked her clinic. He saw Lila sigh sadly over her unsold products. He saw the tears in Ella's eyes as she looked at the empty seats in her classroom. One evening, Charlie sat at the kitchen table, deep in thought. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't notice. He was too worried about his girls. They had worked so hard, but the town still treated them unfairly. Had he done enough to prepare them for this cruel world? As Charlie sat thinking, he heard the radio in the background. The flu epidemic was getting worse. Suddenly, Charlie realized something. This was not just about his daughters anymore. The whole town needed help, and his girls had the skills to provide it. "Girls," Charlie called. "Can we talk?" The sisters gathered around the table, looking at Charlie with concern. He looked at each of them with pride and love. "I know things have been hard," he said gently. "The way this town has treated you isn't right, but people are scared and sick, and they need help. You three have so much to offer." Maya frowned. "But Dad, they don't want our help. They've made that clear." "I know," Charlie said, nodding. "But sometimes doing the right thing means helping, even when people don't appreciate it. Your mom always said that true kindness doesn't ask for anything in return." The girls smiled a little, remembering their mother. Charlie went on, "You've worked so hard to get where you are. Maya, your medical skills can save lives. Lila, your products can help keep people safe. And Ella, your students need you now more than ever." The sisters looked at each other, thinking about what Charlie had said. Finally, Lila spoke up. "But what if they still reject us?" "Then we'll know we did everything we could," Charlie said, squeezing her hand. "And we'll face it together, as a family." Ella's eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was strong. "Dad's right. We can't give up now." Maya nodded, feeling stronger too. "Okay, let's do it. Let's help everyone who needs us." As Charlie looked at his daughters, he saw how strong and kind they were, just like always. Even with all the hard times, the Hernandez family was ready to stay together and help the people in their town. As the flu spread through the town, Maya Carter worked very hard at her small clinic. The waiting room, which was once quiet, was now full of people coughing and whispering. Maya, even though she was tired, moved from one patient to another with kindness. "It's okay, Mrs. Parker," she said softly, putting her hand on an older woman's shoulder. "We'll help you feel better soon." Mrs. Parker nodded weakly, but Maya saw the doubt in her eyes. Many of her patients were unsure about trusting a young black doctor. Even though it hurt, Maya didn't let it stop her. She helped everyone who came to her, no matter how they felt about her. Days blended together as Maya took care of people with fevers, gave them fluids, and did all she could to make them better. Slowly, things began to change. A young mother brought her sick child to Maya, her eyes full of thanks instead of doubt. An older man stopped Maya in the hallway to thank her for saving his wife's life. "Dr. Carter helped my nephew," one person would say. "She never turns anyone away," another would add. More people came to Maya's clinic, needing help more than they held on to their old thoughts. Across town, Lila Carter was at her desk, working hard. The flu was hurting local businesses, and she wanted to help. Lila's fingers moved quickly on her keyboard as she set up online fundraisers and talked to possible donors. "We can do this," she whispered to herself, feeling determined. Lila set up online meetings with other small business owners, offering advice on how to keep going during the crisis. She connected struggling businesses with resources and volunteers, and soon other business owners started reaching out for help. While Maya saved lives, Lila saved businesses. The sisters became very important in helping the town fight the flu. Their hard work was breaking down the walls of prejudice that had been around them for a long time. Ella Carter faced a new challenge when several schools closed because of the flu. Many children had no place to learn, and Ella knew she had to do something. "I can't just sit and watch these kids fall behind," she told Charlie one evening. Her voice was full of determination. Charlie nodded, proud of her. "You've always been great at teaching. What are you thinking?" Ella took a deep breath. "I want to volunteer to teach the kids whose schools are closed. We can use the community center. It's big enough to keep everyone safe." The next day, Ella went to the school board with her idea. They were unsure at first, but the need for learning during the crisis won them over. Ella was allowed to start a temporary classroom at the community center. Word spread quickly about Ella's classes, but some parents were still unsure. Many people still held on to their old ways of thinking, but Ella didn't let their doubts bother her. On the first day, only a few kids came, but Ella welcomed each one with a big smile. "Welcome, everyone," she said kindly. "We're going to learn a lot together, and we'll stay safe." As the days went by, more kids joined the class. Parents who had been unsure saw how much their children were learning. Ella's classroom became a safe and happy place for kids to learn during the hard times. One afternoon, a mother came up to Ella after class. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice shaking a little, "I wanted to thank you. My son hasn't been this excited about school in weeks." Ella felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot to me." The town started to see the Carter sisters in a new way. Maya was saving lives, Lila was helping businesses, and Ella was making sure the children didn't fall behind in their learning. Their hard work was making a big difference. Even though many people were grateful, some still held on to their old thoughts. There were whispers, looks, and muttered comments. But for every bit of doubt, there were many more people saying thank you. As the flu got worse, the town was on the edge of falling apart. The local hospital was full, and businesses were closing. Schools struggled as more teachers and students became sick. The people who had once made fun of Charlie for adopting the Carter sisters now came to their door, asking for help. Maya's small clinic, which had once been ignored by many, was now packed with people who needed help. Maya worked hard, treating patient after patient with care. "Dr. Carter," a man called out, looking worried. "I know I've said mean things before, but my wife is very sick. Can you help her?" Maya nodded without hesitation. "Of course, bring her in right away." Across town, Lila's business skills were in high demand. Business owners who once didn't listen to her ideas were now asking for her help. Lila set up an office at the community center, offering free advice to struggling business owners. "Miss Carter," a shop owner said, his voice shaking, "I don't know how to thank you. Your advice might save my store." Lila smiled warmly. "We're all in this together. Your success is the town's success." Meanwhile, Ella's classroom was full. Parents who once pulled their children out of her class now wanted a spot for them. Ella welcomed each student with open arms. "Miss Ella," a mother said with tears in her eyes, "I was wrong about you. Thank you for teaching our children when no one else could." Ella squeezed the woman's hand. Every child deserves to learn, no matter what's happening in the world. The Hernandez sisters worked hard to help their town, and Charlie watched with pride. The town, which had once shunned them, now needed them to survive. But Charlie didn't feel victorious, only full of purpose and love for his daughters. As the flu raged on, the Hernandez sisters continued to rise to the challenge. Maya's clinic was saving lives, Lila's ideas were saving businesses, and Ella was teaching the town's children. Together, they became a shining light in the darkness. One evening, as Maya closed the clinic, she heard a knock at the door. It was Mr. Evans, the man who had once questioned Charlie's decision to adopt the girls. "Dr. Hernandez," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you saved my grandson's life. I was wrong about you. Thank you." Maya felt a lump in her throat. She nodded, too moved to speak. Across town, Lila's quick thinking was keeping shops open. One day, Mrs. Parker, who owned the town's oldest bakery, came up to Lila with tears in her eyes. "Miss Leela," she said, holding her hand, "your advice saved my family's bakery. I'm ashamed of how I treated you before. You've shown us all what it means to be a real community." Lila smiled, but her heart ached, remembering how people had treated them before. For many years, Ella had worked hard to help children learn. Her classroom became a safe place for kids whose parents were busy working, especially during tough times. Her kind heart and fun ways of teaching kept the children happy and learning, even when things were hard. One day, a father spoke to her, his voice full of thanks. "Miss Ella, you have been a blessing to this town. I was wrong to doubt you. Thank you for everything you've done for our kids." Ella felt proud, but also a bit sad as she remembered the time she didn't get promotions and when people questioned if she was good enough. While the Hernandez sisters, Maya, Lila, and Ella, worked hard to help the town, Charlie watched them from the side, feeling very proud. The same girls who people once didn't trust were now seen as heroes. People who used to laugh at Charlie for adopting them were now praising them. One evening, while Charlie sat on his porch, he overheard two neighbors talking. One of them said, "Can you believe it? The Hernandez girls are saving our town." Charlie knew what he was doing. Charlie smiled, happy but also a little sad. He was proud of his daughters, but the years of rejection and hurt still left a mark on them. As the epidemic got better, the town started to feel safe again. People returned to the streets, and life slowly went back to normal. For the Hernandez sisters, it was a time to think about everything they had gone through. Maya's clinic, which had helped so many people during the crisis, was now an important part of the town. People no longer avoided her because of her race. One evening, as she cleaned up her office, Maya looked at a photo of her younger self with Charlie and her sisters. "We've come so far," she whispered with tears in her eyes. Lila's smart ideas had saved many businesses, and now her plans were helping the town's economy grow again. As she walked down Main Street, shop owners waved at her and called her name. Lila smiled, remembering when those same people wouldn't even look at her. Ella's classroom became famous in the school district. Her hard work during the crisis didn't go unnoticed, and she was finally recognized as one of the best teachers in town. As she prepared for the new school year, she thought about the challenges she had faced and overcome. One warm evening, the sisters sat together on Charlie's porch, just like they used to do. The air smelled like flowers, and the sound of cicadas filled the air. Lila said, "Can you believe how far we've come?" Maya nodded. "I remember when I thought I'd never be accepted here." Ella held her sister's hand and said, "We've helped save this town, and we stayed true to ourselves." Charlie joined them on the porch, his face full of pride. "You girls have overcome so much. I couldn't be prouder." As they sat together, the sisters realized they didn't need the town's approval anymore. They were proud of their own accomplishments. "We don't need their validation," Maya said. "We know our worth." Lila agreed. "We've proven ourselves to them and to ourselves." Ella smiled, and we did it together as a family. As the sun set, the sisters felt peace. They had faced tough times, but they came out stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. Later, the town held a special celebration. The square was filled with colorful banners, and people were excited. Mayor Roberts stepped up to a microphone and said, "We are here today to honor 3 amazing women. They've shown us the true meaning of kindness, strength, and unity." The crowd went quiet as Maya, Lila, and Ella walked up to the stage. Charlie sat in the front row, already tearing up. The mayor continued, "These sisters, who some of us once doubted, have proven to be the heart of our community. During the darkest times, they stood strong." The mayor looked at Maya and said, "Maya, your clinic was a place of Ella for so many. You saved lives." Maya stood tall, looking at the crowd, seeing people who once turned away from her now looking at her with thanks. "Lila, the mayor said next. Your smart business ideas saved local businesses and helped our economy recover. Lila smiled, thinking of all the hard work she had done. And Ella, the mayor said warmly, your dedication to teaching our children was inspiring. You've shaped the future of our town. Ella's eyes found her students in the crowd, their faces filled with pride. The mayor raised his voice. These sisters have taught us that strength comes not from our differences, but from coming together. Charlie couldn't hold back his tears. He was so proud of his daughters. The mayor thanked the sisters on behalf of the whole community. The crowd cheered loudly, clapping for the sisters. Charlie watched, feeling so much pride he could hardly contain it. These were his girls, the family he and Samantha had dreamed of, and they had become more than he could have ever imagined. As the celebration ended, Charlie sat alone on a bench, watching the sun set. He pulled out Samantha's wedding ring from his pocket, holding it in his hand as he thought about all the memories. He remembered when he first met the Hernandez sisters and how people had doubted his decision to adopt them. But most of all, he remembered the love that had grown between him and his daughters. Tears filled his eyes as he watched Maya laughing with people whose lives she had saved. He saw Lila chatting with business owners, her face full of passion, and he saw Ella surrounded by children, her face glowing with happiness. Charlie closed his eyes and whispered softly, "We did it, Samantha. We built the family we always wanted." When he opened his eyes, he saw the town in a new way. The once prejudiced community had changed. People who once were afraid now showed love and thanks. The Hernandez sisters had not only found their place in the town, they had changed it for the better. Charlie knew that their kindness, strength, and love would live on in the town for years to come. For the first time in years, Charlie felt true peace. Despite all the struggles, they had made it. His daughters had found their place in the world, and they had helped others find theirs too. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to my channel. I spend a lot of time writing these heartwarming and inspiring stories for you, and your support means a lot to me.